How do you see that things have changed for people as far as the marketing goes from the time you started until now?
And then right then is really when the internet became a thing. I didn't have any savings. I wasn't married. I didn't have a trust fund or inheritance or alimony or any of those things.
So impressive, like I told you before, because it's so hard for people to make that kind of change.
And we all were communicating for hours a day on Twitter. That's important to recognize. Sometimes when you say yes, you never know where it's going to lead.
Hello everyone and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine. I am Nadine and today's guest is M Carothers, and she is the owner of a very popular and very successful digital marketing agency. And we're going to talk today all things digital marketing and then also get to know her a little bit, some personal things that you're interested in. And she's going to give some great advice to business owners out there, interior designers that, might need some help with marketing in general. So how are you, Leslie?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Nadine. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure. So the first thing I want to talk about is your career and how it started. So you were an interior designer for years.
I was.
And we were just sitting down having a chit chat about how she kind of got into digital marketing. And it's an amazing story, how you took a leap of faith. And so let's talk about what made you go from interior design into the digital marketing that you're doing right now.
So what really made me go into it was September 11th, 2001. After 9/11 happened, I thought to myself, I really wanted to own my own business. I really had that desire for a little while. I had been doing interior design in Houston for 16 years up to that point. I had worked 10 years for Roche-Bobois, some of you know that company, and then 6 years for another company locally called Cantoni.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing full service interior design for both of those companies. But probably in about my 14th year, I was starting to think I really want to go out on my own and do something. And then right then is really when the internet became a thing. It wasn't quite a thing yet, but right when I started thinking about that is when the internet started becoming a thing. And I saw that that really would potentially change our entire industry, because anything that can save people time is going to get adopted. And then there were some early sites that were focused on selling furniture through the internet, et cetera. And that's really where I wanted to go. And so, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. I was doing great. I'd had wonderful clients, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So it was hard. But when 9/11 came around, it was really the catalyst, because I thought, now or never, life is short. We never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it really was the catalyst. So that happened in September of 2001. And I left my career in May of 2002. But I left in a very unique way. So I really made a quick decision really to leave. And I didn't have any savings. I wasn't married. I didn't have a trust fund or inheritance or alimony or any of those things. So to leave and go out on my own really required a huge leap of faith, but also a huge change in my lifestyle. So I was living in a very luxurious spot over on Herman Park Drive. I moved into a very, very cheap complex over in the Briar Forest area, $500 a month. I traded in my very fancy car and bought an old used Honda Civic for $5,000. And I really cut every living expense just as hard as I could in order to be able to really try to live my dream. And I really didn't know at that point if I was going to be able to or not. But that was necessary in order to really see if I could make it work.
That's so impressive, like I told you before, because it's so hard for people to make that kind of change when they're, and like you mentioned, when you did that, you were in your 40s, right? So you were already comfortable with the lifestyle you were living.
Yes.
And so that's very hard for people to make that huge change.
It was hard. I was definitely very used to living a luxury lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And of course, my clients were all living that lifestyle too. So for 16 years, I'd really been surrounded, immersed in the luxury lifestyle, of my clients and the way that I was living as well. And so I'm proud of myself now, 22 years later, for having made that big leap, but it was really stupid. So any of you watching, you probably want to save a little money before you make a leap like that.
A little bit more preparation,
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, well, no, that's amazing. Kudos to you for doing that, because that's hard, really hard on people,
Thank you. Thank you.
to make that change. And you've become so successful at what you're doing. Now, over the years, I'm sure you've seen lots of changes in marketing, digital marketing. These things on the internet age or anything digital changes all the time anyways, right?
It does, yes.
So, how do you see that things have changed for people as far as marketing goes, from the time you started until now?
Oh my goodness. Well, when I first started, traditional PR firms and social media companies were completely separated. And I actually did start the first social media agency for the furniture and design industry. There wasn't another one when I first started 22 years ago. So it was the first. And so I would work with traditional PR firms in the first years of my business when I was working for major brands only. I wasn't working with designers until 4 years into my business. So when I was working only on the major brand side, I was always working with a traditional PR firm because it was very separated. And of course, now, traditional PR firms also, do social media, digital marketing, all of them. So that's a huge change, that traditional PR firms were able to see the value in social media. But what really was a catalyst for all of that was in 2008 when our economy tanked. And so many furniture manufacturers were having to cut every single expense out of their budgets, which included their marketing budgets. So the big thing I saw in 2008 was Twitter, because Twitter was just a thing right then. And I saw that this was going to be a free way for our industry to communicate both with each other, but also with the consumer. So I worked very hard for the first 4 years between 2008 and 2012 to connect our industry together on Twitter. And anyone who's watching this who remembers knows that's true. And we all were communicating for hours a day on Twitter. And in this way, any consumer that was following any one of us was really able to listen in. But this was really free marketing, free publicity. So that was the first major shift that occurred in digital marketing back then. And then originally all of the, there was the whole blogging community. And then another shift was when that became known as the influencer community. Yeah. So the shift from sort of the design bloggers conference to design influencers conference. And so influencer marketing became such a big thing. And that was, of course, a lot due to two people, Veronica Eagleson, and also Adam Japko, who is the founder of the Design Influencers Conference. Veronica has her influencer agency called Design Hounds. I was one of the very first members of Design Hounds myself. Oh, wow. Yep. And so Veronica and I go way back. She was one of the people that I met on Twitter originally, way back when. And we've had a long, and Adam as well. So anyway, that was another major shift. And now, today, just I think the real shift is how we're all using AI for content production and different types of things. So I've been very involved in that now for the past 2 years, because that is sort of the next iteration of digital marketing, how we're able to use AI tools to speed up what we're doing from a digital perspective.
Speaking of AI,
yes,
let's talk about this AI sync that you had, that you made, and what happened there. How did that come about? That's an interesting story too. So I want to hear about that
for sure. So I got really interested in all things virtual actually back in 2008. So I conducted the first product development experiment in the virtual world of Second Life in 2008 with Sly Furniture. And you can read about that on FurnitureToday.com. If you go look at Sly Furniture, Second Life, you'll see that article I wrote for them about that experiment. But back in 2008, nobody was ready for anything virtual. So fast forward to, 2020. And one of my clients at that time was a company called Seasonal Living. And so I was the co-principal in the world's first virtual designer show house, which was a collaboration between 15 brands and 11 designers. So that was very exciting. That debuted on December 3rd, 2020. Fast forward from that, into doing workshops on Midjourney and the metaverse with Annalie Waterman, who's a rendering artist that actually rendered the Seasonal Living's virtual designer show house. And fast forward from those workshops into speaking about AI, I was invited to speak at the first Vacation Rental Designer Summit at High Point and give a talk about AI and content. And so I gave that talk, and in the audience was the National Sales Director for Thomson, Andrew Holben, and he came up to me afterwards. I didn't know he was there. And he said, Leslie, did you know I had an interest in AI? And I said, no, I didn't know that. But that was the extent of our conversation. So about a month later, I got an email from Alejandra Thompson de Jordan, VP of Marketing for Thomson, and it said, crazy idea. How would you like to create a sync for us in Midjourney and we'll produce it? And that was how it came about. So I didn't ever have any inkling of an idea in my mind that I would do some product in AI or ever talk to Thomson about it, or it just wasn't even in my brain that I would be doing
not
something
on your
like
radar
that
at all.
Yeah, so it was really just, it was Andrew's idea. And then they approached me about it. And it took me a few minutes to think about it because I'm not a product designer. I'm obviously not an interior designer anymore. But I thought, this is going to be this could be a great way to show designers what's possible. Great case study to show them that they too could use AI to create a product and then work with the manufacturer to produce it for them. And that product would be completely customized for their clients. It would be something that would be also potentially, generate publicity for them because it would be one of the first, to be produced using AI. So I thought, okay, I'll do this. So I said yes. And Thomson proceeded to make my sink that I designed in Midjourney, or with Midjourney, I should say, or really that Midjourney design via my text prompt is probably the right way to say that. And it debuted at the National Kitchen and Bath Show in February of this year to great fanfare. And it was very exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was super exciting. And now it is available to purchase on their website. It can be customized. You can, go see it at thompsontraders.com if you want to. But I'm very proud of it. It's a beautiful sink. But what it represents in terms of the technological advancement is amazing. And Thomson, on their part, did something really wonderful, which is when I originally created the Midjourney image, it did not have a drain. So they had to work very hard with their coppersmithing artisans to develop a drain that kept the same aesthetic of the sink, of the image of the sink that I presented to them. And they were able to do that really, really beautifully. So I was super proud of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have never thought all those years ago when you went into this, that you would have done so many things and had so much exposure and, spoke in front of so many conferences and, people listen to you and, creating products. Like, who would have known?
Trust me. Absolutely not me.
Yeah.
I really had no idea. And this is something that's important to recognize. Sometimes when you say yes, you never know where it's going to lead. One of the things that came out of this thing that none of us anticipated was that there were last year, especially, so many editors looking to write articles about AI and interior design. It was just, a hot topic, still is, but last year was especially hot. And so I wrote a blog post on my own blog about the sink, what I was doing. And so when editors went to search Google for AI and interior design, there wasn't a lot. And so my blog kept coming up. So we just got called and called and called, by editors for interviews, etc. So the sink got featured in places that I never in a million years would have dreamed, like Architect Magazine, Realtor Magazine, on Livable. I was interviewed for Better Homes and Gardens magazine, which was huge. And it was just, it was a huge PR bonanza for Thomson, obviously good for me too. So, sometimes saying yes is a good thing to something that you've never done before. You don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah. Again, taking another leap of faith and, see what happens.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Now, another interesting tidbit about you is the whole Labyrinth thing that you're involved in. I want to talk a little bit about that and explain a little bit to people, what is a labyrinth? And how did you get into that? It's very interesting. And the last time we talked, it talked about that too. And I thought, oh, this is a very interesting discussion. So I think being a trained labyrinth, you can go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
So I've always been a person who thinks that our universe is completely connected in every way through energy. And so when I was leaving my interior design career and prior to starting what I'm doing now, there was a workshop or a week-long workshop type thing that I took from these two women. And it involved all kinds of deep introspection. And that's where I originally found out about the labyrinth, like what it is. So a lot of people think the labyrinth is a maze where you get lost, you walk in and get lost, but no, a labyrinth is actually a walking meditation tool, and it's a pattern that's laid out on the ground. One of the oldest labyrinths is actually in Chartres Cathedral in France. You can find labyrinths now in medical centers all over the world. There's a really nice one at MD Anderson in Houston. They're in churches, they're everywhere. And so really it's a pattern on the ground that you walk into and you eventually end up at the center, but you don't get there right away. So the whole idea of walking into a labyrinth is holding an intention when you walk in, and then just really paying attention to what's coming up for you in your heart when you're walking through it, and thinking carefully about that. And then afterwards, really, hopefully sitting down with a journal of some sort and just writing down your thoughts.
Reflection.
Yeah. And then, so it's an amazing way to reflect on what's really going on. It just slows you down. Because you're not getting right to the center. You know, we're so used to speeding up and getting right to what we need and then getting back out and doing the next thing. So it just forces you to slow down. And sometimes that slowing down can be very stressful for people because they want to, you know, what they find about themselves when they're in it is really interesting. And there is no right way or wrong way to walk a labyrinth. But anyway, I got very interested in the labyrinth when I was taking that workshop. So interested that I really made it a focus of my career, my early part of what I was doing when I first started my own business. So we didn't go into this, but when I first started my own business in 2002, I had written a 62-page workbook that trained retail sales associates how to use design in their presentations with their clients. And as part of that, I ended up taking a portable labyrinth into my retail clients' showrooms and having their sales associates walk it as a way to discuss, collaboration, and as a way to discuss how they were getting along with their teammates and to have them really feel that. And it was really interesting. I was so excited that some of my clients, let me bring it and let me use it from a training perspective in their showrooms. It was really a lot of fun.
That's a great team building exercise, right?
It was amazing and so interesting. And, the sales associates weren't always comfortable with it because they didn't really know what it was, but it definitely pointed up to them, especially, where they, lots of things that we could talk about afterwards or that they could wait, not talk about, and then talk about later on. But it was a lot of fun to use that as a team building exercise in different, showroom environments with my clients. So now, and then later on, I was working with it at Unity Church, doing some labyrinth walks, and I actually trained as a labyrinth facilitator with Dr. Lauren Artress, who runs a program called Veritas out of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And the labyrinth facilitator is simply someone just who holds the energy for people who walk through the labyrinth and really helps people understand really what it is. There's no big thing about being a labyrinth facilitator, but just having a deeper understanding of holding energy for people and what that entails and helping them explore what they're feeling once they walk out of it. So if I'm doing a formal labyrinth walk, that's what I'm doing, actually. I'm just standing there making sure that they're basically okay. And if they break down crying or something, just to, offer them support in whatever way they might need it.
A little bit of a moderator.
It's been, and for me personally, whenever I'm feeling unsure about something or just uncentered, which can often happen when you're spending all day online,
right,
and on a computer screen, just grounding myself by walking a labyrinth. There's a beautiful one not that far from where I live. It just really helps me get grounded and really focused in on what is really going on inside me. and spending time afterwards, and it's out in nature. And spending time afterwards, just writing my thoughts down is really one thing that helps me stay very centered.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, the other little tidbit about you a lot of people don't know about is that you are 95% deaf, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that you may have had in your career with that, if there was any, and how you overcame those. But I know that this happened to you a little bit later in life. You were a teenager when this happened, right?
Yes. So I was well, we really don't know exactly how it happened, but I was in a very bad auto accident when I was 16 and a half years old, and my head smashed into the windshield because I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and it went through the windshield. So we think it was that impact that caused the hearing loss, and I didn't really notice it until I was 19. But it was very noticeable when I was 19 years old, and that's when I had to start wearing hearing aids. And luckily, though, I grew up speaking perfectly, so I don't have a speech impediment. But my doctors have said, for someone that's 95% deaf, you speak better than anyone we've ever heard. So evidently, as you get more and more deaf, because I didn't start out at 95%, I was probably 80%. But as I've gotten older, it's definitely gotten worse. And luckily, hearing aids have gotten progressively better and better and better, the technology. So I'm very lucky that now it hasn't ever prohibited me, though, from doing anything with my career. You know, I started speaking early on in my career and have been speaking nationally now, for almost 20 years. So I really haven't ever felt that it's hindered me in any way. Just, I think, made people hopefully realize that no matter what kind of a disability they might have, that they can go forward from that disability. And of course, now in our climate today, I think that's even, more accepted than ever.
Yeah, there's more and more out there with, helping support people that have some sort of disability and making sure they have tools that they need to do whatever they want to do in life.
Exactly.
And the support.
That they're included.
Yeah.
For instance, I will say that I was really impressed at that first Vacation Rental Design Summit that I attended and spoke at. One of the other speakers was a woman in a wheelchair, and she has started her whole business, but she is disabled, and she started a business around vacation rentals and how disabled people can access a vacation rental. The accessibility aspects of owning a vacation rental. So that's fascinating to me.
That's great too, because I'm sure, her being disabled herself, right? She can really have a first-person view.
Exactly.
And help those other people too.
Exactly.
To achieve that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. So she was a very interesting speaker. And I want to give kudos to Jane Dagme and Jessica Deuce, who founded, the Vacation Rental Design Summit, for making sure that she was a speaker. I thought that was great. Jessica both were really focused on making sure that there was a big component of people that were included that might not otherwise have been.
Now we're going to close this episode on kind of the same note, and I want you to go ahead and tell me your funny story. Well, you said it was kind of a funny story about what happened when you were speaking once with the hearing aid.
Yes.
Funny, but heartwarming at the same time, and it turned out okay, right, in the end?
It did.
And then you can touch on, that also has to do with the fact that the technology of the hearing aids has improved a lot since then too, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
So I was speaking at High Point Market in Universal Furniture's Learning Center, and I was actually moderating a talk with my very good friend, Laura Muller, who owns a company out in Los Angeles called 4 Point Design Build. And we were talking, our talk was on authenticity and online branding. And so the audience was packed, and here we are. So Laura and I are sitting in bar stools at the very front of the center, and all of a sudden, I hear this beeping in my ear.
Oh, no.
And that tells me that my hearing aid is out of battery. I did not have the hearing aids that I have now then. So then hearing aids were run by a battery. And so I'm moderating this whole talk in front of all these people, and I'm like, oh my God, I am going to lose my ability to hear anything within 15 minutes or so. What do I do? And we were just starting. So, and the whole thing was being filmed on video because Universal films everything, and they put it up on their YouTube channel. So I'm literally sweating bullets, like just freaking out. Like, oh my God, this is one of my worst moments ever. But we were talking about
Yeah,
authenticity.
that's pretty authentic.
So I decided just to share it with the
Yeah.
audience, and I had to. And so I did. And that is still up on YouTube, on Universal's, Furniture's YouTube channel, what I shared. I just told them, this is what's happening to me. So just know. And everybody was so, sympathetic, very understanding. But here's what was a miracle. My hearing aids did not go out. Those batteries stayed good the whole time. I couldn't believe it, actually. It was like for an hour, we were
Wow.
speaking. So usually they are going out. It was like, for me, like a small little mini miracle in
Something
my
in the
life.
universe helped you.
Seriously, that's exactly
sure.
how it felt. And
Yeah.
so I was so grateful for that. And everything turned out great. Laura was supported in the way that she needed to be, and I was able to moderate properly. So having to make that decision as to whether or not to tell the audience what was going on. And I really had never spoken so openly about my hearing loss, especially in a public forum like that. So that was a first for me. And having to do it at such a dramatic time was really a signal from the universe.
Because if anybody knows High Point, when they attend any of those talks, that's not a small number of people that are usually sitting in those rooms.
No, this room was packed too, because everybody wanted to hear Laura. She's very authentic. She's a fabulous designer. So she drew a big crowd. So it was definitely one of those moments. And so I think the lesson is you just have to be vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, people will, they'll come to your side because they understand, it could as easily be them having to deal with something up like that up there. But still, that was a thing.
Yeah. I see for the most part in any situations like that, people are usually generally very empathetic for people, and they understand. But it was good on you to announce it, just to tell people what might happen, just in case if it did, the people just don't wonder what the heck is happening here.
Exactly. And knowing that it was all being videotaped.
Yeah.
I did think that they might cut that part, but they didn't. They left that in. So it's up there for the world to see forever and ever. And, obviously talking about it here again on your podcast is, another moment of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good for people. And I appreciate you asking me to know that no matter what your disability, it's only a disability as far as you let it be one.
That's true. I like that.
One thing I do is I always ask now for an extra microphone. And for someone to be in the audience, to hand a microphone to the person asking me a question so I can make sure and hear the question. Because if someone just stands up and asks me a question from an audience, I cannot hear it, even with my more powerful hearing aids that are in now. But just, these hearing aids that I have now are Bluetooth enabled. So they're no longer battery. They charge automatically in a little carrying case, and they're amazing. So you don't have to have battery-powered hearing aids anymore.
Better technology.
The technology is it's fabulous how much it's changed. And for anyone that has a hard of hearing parent or someone else in your life, and they think, about the old types of hearing aids, if that's all they have in their head because they've never seen anything else, make sure that you just get them straight over to an audiologist who can show them what's new. It's amazing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful, actually.
Well, thank you, Leslie, for sitting and talking with me, talking a bit about your business. And it was great to get to know you as a person.
Thank you
So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll have to do this again.
Thank you, Nadine. I would love to.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
So until then, stay tuned for the next one.